Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Wealth Creation Show. Today we're going to cover a topic about discussing future-proofing your wealth, which I'm sure you'll have a lot of insights in, Jim, because it's been something that's been in the forefront of your mind for a long time. Not just building your wealth, but future-proofing it for the generations.
The biggest challenge, isn't it? It's just, I just like inheritance tax. It's like, oh my God. It's hence the reason why I've got a don't die attitude. It's like I would hate to think I'm going to pay millions in inheritance tax. That's the sort of thing. So you're absolutely right. It's probably one of the most topical subjects, especially for the baby boomers. And I think I'm Generation X. I just missed baby boomer, and I've fallen to Generation X. So it's these two generations that are actually come round now, and they really seriously need to think about inheritance tax. And this is why you've got a mass exodus of landlords at this point in time, selling up. Because I spoke to somebody, the other night at the Property Investors Network meeting when I was doing the talk. It was quite interesting. And I spoke to them about it. How is everybody conditioned to actually sell up when they get to about retirement, which is so-called 65, 67-year-old? Why are people conditioned like that? What, you're not planning on living for another 20 to 30 years?
Yeah, and it's the social condition in your brain. You think, right, I'm at that age, it's time to just wind down, sell off. I mean, why would you sell off your assets, especially if they're still generating income and appreciating?
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. I don't get it. But probably because my mind's completely different in the way I've conditioned it over the years and trained it over the years with the amount of people I've spoken to, the books I've read, the people I've associated with, and the functions I've attended. All these different things have actually came up to the summation about who set the rules.
Yeah.
Who put us in this box and decided that's what's happening and that's where you should go. That's what gets me. Yeah. Who set these? Oh, it was the government.
I was just going to say the system and the government, and then the government that in time won't even have anything to provide you with.
We're a nation of queuers, and what happens in our mind is we all queue up to follow what the government says. That's just completely bizarre when you look at it. In actual fact, challenge yourself. That's what I would say. Challenge your mindset. Challenge your thinking. Challenge the way you're thinking right now, and say, why am I thinking like that? Surely there's another way. And it is. Just take an axe out and go down and get your best tree in your garden that's produced loads and loads of apples or fruit or something for life, and then just go and chop it down.
Yeah.
How much fruit do you think that's going to give you from years on? None. And that's exactly what happens when you sell your investment property. You lose the income straight away. It's like, oh, but I've got a big gain. It's like, aye, but it's not going to last that long. Or I can give it to somebody that needs it. One of the kids or that. Would you not be better to give them the asset then? Because you're still going to pay capital gains on it, irrespective. If you sell it, you pay capital gains on it. If you give it to your child, you pay capital gains on it. You pay the same capital gains.
Yeah, you'll pay them.
You better to give it to them so they could at least have the income, and therefore job done. And if you really do want the income back, and then you ask them, any chance you could just float that back to me. This then comes back to, you better have looked after your children and actually taught your children well when they've been growing up. This is a lesson for the younger generation to learn, because your younger generation will put you in a home. If you've mistreated them, they'll just cast you at the side and no bother. And that's why it's important to make sure that you teach your children well, but you lead by example as well in the way you are, because they'll do exactly what you do to them. They'll do exactly what they do to you.
Yeah.
My sister says it to my mum. It's like, I've got no qualms about putting you in a home. It's like, what? But then that's the relationship they had. That's a lesson I've learned very, very well, and it's a valuable lesson. But I've not gone out my way to do that with my children on this prospect. Oh my God, they're going to put me in a home. It's like, no, I've got enough money. I'll just pay for people to look after me.
You've got that. But then I think, like you say, it's all down to how you've taught them and how you've raised your children and how they see the world and how they respect you or how they view you. do you know, if your children turn around and say, we're just going to bung you in an old folks home, then there may be a question about the years previous to that, why they're at that point, rather than wanting to care.
When I think about the logic of this, when I was my children's age, I mean 23, 24 or 25, give or take a year. Tony's 31. When I think about that, and think about the relationship I have with them, and they come on holiday with me, and I go diving with them as well, and they do what I want to do, and we run sometimes together. Tony and I, we do triathlons together. Tony and I. You know, climb mountains, go to the theatre, go to music events, sometimes go camping, all these different things. I never did anything like that with my father. Right. It's like the nearest I got to that was coming to the club for a pint.
Mm-hmm. So wasn't it really sharing experiences and time together as such?
It was to a degree. I mean, I loved it because I used to hear all the stories from his group of people about what they did when they were younger and all the shenanigans they got up to. So for me personally, it's the whole thing about there was nothing more sacred than a man's drinking club. Unfortunately, that had to go by the way because you can only drink so much and then you're on your way out pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
So that's another lesson I've learned, by the way. Hence the reason why I don't drink, because I've seen so many people go to, and that's future-proofing your wealth. Your wealth is just as much future-proofing your health as well. That's and hence the reason that's why what I spoke about at the pin. It's the most important thing ever. If you've not got your health, you're not going to even enjoy your money. You're not even going to be able to use your money. If you've got your health. And you don't have your money, at least you've got your health and you're still here. That's the most important thing, I suppose. And you've got a chance of developing something. But you've not got that. No matter how much money you've got, it's not going to do you any good. Look at Eddie Jordan. F1. 76-year-old. Done. Yesterday. Or the 30th, actually. Unbelievable. When you think about that. His money never saved him.
Yeah. Yeah, because he never had the health to keep him going.
No. There's a lot to be said about that. Hence the reason nutrition and everything is so important as well. But we'll talk about these things and we'll touch on them all the way through here.
Yeah, as we go through talk about the future proofing and things of your wealth, I think it's important, like we've touched on it there, about people's mindset and how they view themselves and the world around them. And you know, people can become wealthy. You know, you could be quite successful in building investments and things, or you could inherit it and have it overnight, or you could win the lottery or whatever. But it's how you treat it and how you approach it. I mean, let's, before we move on, talk about money itself, because people have a lot of different views about money and what to do with it. Social media and things has such a big influence on people because they think a lot of people think it's all about cars, and
95% of the population just spend it.
I just want to spend it. Yeah, and that's what I mean. But you need to get out of that mindset, because you'll end up blowing it all, basically, and that's about the short of it.
95% will spend it. I'll guarantee you. You have to determine, are you going to be the 5% that invests it properly? And it's that shift in mindset. It's just a wee thing about, you know, if you get money, it's like, what can I invest? What have I got left to spend? Whereas most people, 95%, when I get money, what can I spend on? Game shows, what are you going to spend on? Every single time. No longer what are you going to do with it, it's what are you going to spend on. The encouragement all the time to do that. Spend. And it just keeps the economy going. This is all designed and circulated to prosper the producers from the consumers. 5% producers, 95% consumers.
And do you think that it'll always be that way, the 95 and 5%?
That's the way the system works. That's the way the capitalistic system works. You have got to choose whether you're going to step out the 95% and go into 5% and actually do something about it. It's got nothing to do with wealth, by the way. Wealth comes as a result of making a decision to be in the 5% group and do what 5% people do. And not the other way around. You don't appear by getting the money and then suddenly you're in the 5%. Just because you inherited £1 million doesn't mean to say you're in the 5%, because you'll spend it all by next year.
That's really interesting that you say, because I know that a lot of people will think of it that way around. They'll think, oh, I need to accumulate the wealth and then I'll be in the 5% club.
Yeah,
But you need to have the
I've got
mindset.
£1 million. I've got £1 million in the bank because I won the lottery or something like that. And it's like now I'm part 0.15% of the wealthiest people in Britain. It's like, okay, but you're still not in the 5% group.
You've not got that mindset, and you're never going to be able to manage that money correctly, and you're going to end up blowing it all. And that's what happens to lottery winners a lot of the time.
I actually saw it the other day. I was reading Mark Wilkinson's book, Money Remixed, actually.
Okay.
And in there, he actually says, thank God he never won the lottery when he was younger, because it would have destroyed him. He actually says that it would have destroyed him. And it's the same for me. It's like it would have made it so easy. There would never have been any victory. There can be no victory without defeat.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be defeats on the way. If you've never failed, you've probably never succeeded at anything. And it's an old cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
You will fail at quite a lot of things. An investment, you'll fail. But I tell you what, if you do the investment right, you'll fail at a lot. But it's like the person that I'm sure I read the other day as well. I was reading an article, and the guy says, I lost 100. He loses 100 million a year, but he actually makes $1 billion a year.
So it doesn't really matter about that.
So he's up 900 million.
Yeah.
So when somebody goes, oh my God, you lose 100 million a year. Yeah, but I make $1 billion a year.
Yeah, that's maybe a crazy thing for a lot of people to think about, those kind of numbers. But when you're at that level, losing that in comparison to the gain,
you may lose £1,000 a month, but if you're making £5,000 a month, you're still £4,000 up.
Mm-hmm.
That's how business works. That's how investment works as well. Some you lose, some you don't. You just make sure you win more than you lose. That's it. It's the typical example of let's do pension, stocks and shares. Classic example about putting it into maybe high risk strategy. If you put it in consistently all the time, some of these points that you put it in will be winners overall. But if you leave it for a really long period of time, more than likely they'll all be winners because it compounds over time. I mean, the FTSE is sitting at something like, is it 8,700 now?
I couldn't tell you for definite.
It's gone up 1,000 since I last spoke about it last year. It's gone up 1,000 points. And so it's gone up from 7,000. So 1,000 points up, and the FTSE 100 is a 13% increase since last year.
Okay.
So if you put your money in at 7,600, cha-ching, I did. Then you made 13% on that money. Plus, you've got the tax back on it as well, which is a credit of, I think it's 20%. So 33% return. I never did anything for it. I just put money in. I just put money in my pension.
But it's having the knowledge and
I actually got more of a return because I got a lower rate because I was a higher rate payer, and I actually got a deduction with that as well. So I actually went and made I think a 53% return.
That's good.
In a year.
For doing nothing, except putting it in the right place.
That's what people don't realize. And then they go, well, I tell you, but you'll have to take it out at some point in time. You'll get taxed on it. I might take it out when I've got nothing else left, and I'll just draw that out and use my personal allowances and my tax thresholds at that time. Because by the time I take that out, I'll probably never take it out, to be honest. I'll maybe be 20, 30 years in from now, so I'll be 80 odd.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still be here, by the way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you still have a lot of time left after that.
77 is the average age. Well, 76.8 is the average age in Scotland for a man, and 80.8 is the average lifespan for a woman. Mm-hmm. So if you're 60 right now, if you're a man, you've literally just got 17 years left on average. Remember, Eddie Jordan, 76. He didn't make it to the average. And there's people that's like, Stedman, it used to be in 5-star. Used to be the Michael Jackson sort of person in 5-star themselves. You'll maybe not remember. You're a bit younger.
No, I think that's a wee bit.
60-year-old, he's done. Just the other day.
See, that's
60-year-old, done, gone. It's like, wait a minute, that's only 2 years away from me.
I know, and then even when I think like 60, I mean, it's only nearly 20 years.
That's how important your health is.
Yeah. And
when you're 20-year-old, you just throw caution to the wind and neck it every weekend. Thinking that you've got longevity and you're going to live forever. Sadly, you're poisoning yourself every single day. And you're shortening. Just think every pint you drink, you're shortening maybe 15 minutes of your life.
I know, that's a scary thing. Do you know, even when, I mean, everybody's probably done it. I mean, I think back to my
Imagine
20s.
if everything had that on it, eh? Imagine if
Yeah.
everything had a time on it about how much time you're trading of your life at the end. Imagine if you were able to work that out and put on every single thing that you consumed.
Do you know, scarily enough, I don't think it would stop some people.
Because it's a mindset. Because if they're depressed, it's like, well, what does it matter? The quicker
Yeah.
I go, the better. It's like I just didn't want to be here anymore. So I understand that completely. I can sympathise with that because I have been in that frame of mind at some point way in the past. So I can get that. But imagine if that happened. It's like that was on it. You're absolutely right, though. Some people would just ignore it and they would go about their daily lives. Blissful ignorance, it's called.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But remember, there's only a 5% group and there's a 95% group. That's it, really. You just want to make sure, if you're not in the 5%, you want to make sure you're the better half of the 95%. At least you're not needing to work anymore. You're still here because you never died, and you've no retired on, 2/3 of what you couldn't afford to live on in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make that. That's the point. So at least you're in a better position, and that's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Future-proofing your wealth.
Yeah, you made a good point there, and I'll just double back to it because I kind of want to elaborate a wee bit about gains. And obviously, we're talking about, you're losing £1,000 a month, but you're gaining, but you're making 5, so you've got 4 left. And people watching might think, but I don't have that kind of money coming in. But to simplify that, just think about what your salary coming in. I mean, have you got more outgoings than you've got incoming? If you have, sort that out straight away, because that's just you're never going to get anywhere because you're losing every month, and you'll probably end up building up credit card debt and other debts to facilitate a lifestyle that you shouldn't be living. So yeah, think about what you're losing and what you're gaining.
I had somebody the other day actually said to me, it's like, so what's your objective? I just didn't want to pay more tax. Well, even if somebody gave you £1,000 for nothing every single month, you wouldn't want to take it because you didn't want to pay more tax. They actually said, yeah.
That's
like, what? Are you nuts? Just think about that. You're getting free money and you know what to pay tax on it, so you won't take the free money. Pay the tax at 30% or whatever it is, and then you've got £700 you got for nothing.
Do you think they maybe just got a better taste in their mouth about the tax, man?
just had difficulty mindset where they are right now. And I've probably reprogrammed that actually in that person, so that that it will work for them. They understand that now, but it took a wee while to get it through.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to actually. This is why it's important. I wouldn't say a mentor, but somebody actually that knows, understands, how you think and what you're saying right now, and is able to come back to you and say, "Do you realize what you're saying to yourself? Do you understand what you're saying to yourself? Let me just say it to you, what you just said to yourself. This is what you just said." And you go, "No, never. That's what you just said. So what does that mean? And where are you now for that reason?" And that's why it's important to do that. But that takes tough love, and that takes understanding from the other person to say, like, this is about a growth opportunity, not an opportunity to go in the corner and have a pity party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to bring that up with you, and it's right what you say about finding the right people to advise you, and people that understand you and kind of align with what your thought process is, but are a lot more successful in what they do and can show you better ways to do things. And you obviously throughout the years, Jim, have sought out people that have helped you along the way. And I mean, you didn't just do it all on your own. You needed these people to feed from and help you progress as well.
You have to do that. I mean, it's Bob Proctor, it's Zig Ziglar, it's all their books, it's Napoleon Hill, it's Tony Robbins, it's Richard Branson, it's Alan Sugar, it's Ballantyne as well, Duncan Ballantyne. These are all books that I've read that they've all done over the years. It's even the standard books, like, for example, Business Accounting. I was an accountant, but I still read my business accountant several times in order to get it word for word perfect and understand how accounts works and how you can look at a balance sheet and work out somebody's profit based on just the balance sheet. or you can work out how much. You can work out how much they're making in profit from the balance sheet, and you can work out almost how much they're actually paying themselves. You work out the true net worth as well of the company, rather than actually relying on what the balance sheet tells you. So it's all these different things.
Yeah, that's totally true, and it is all about finding somebody that aligns with the way you think. When I studied business management, the accounting side, to start with, and I mean, there's a lot of people who actually left after the first class of that, left the whole course because the accountants, the account side of it, they just thought it was so difficult.
It's standard practice when you go to college and you do courses like that usually find by the time you get to Christmas, 50% of people are no longer there.
Oh yeah, I mean the next class was like there was only a handful of us, and we all agreed like we'll stick it out, like we'll get it. And you know, it turned out that the tutor that was teaching at the time, I just couldn't get it. And the head of the department, I ended up going in on a Thursday separately and got taught by him, and it just fell into place because he was able to teach me in a different way that the actual tutor did. And it just fell into place, which I'm glad, because otherwise I don't think I'd have got through it. But just
that's what I explained when I was doing that talk the other night.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing the talk the other night, I says, if you don't resonate with what I'm talking about, or you think I'm full of shit, to be honest, come back next month. It doesn't matter, because you'll find somebody you do resonate with.
Yeah.
It's don't just give up. And I showed them the life cycle of an investor and how it's it's uninformed optimism at the beginning. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be rich. And then informed pessimism comes right after it, because it's like, oh my God, I've got to do what?
I've got to do all this to get there.
Yeah. And then that's either they get a hold of somebody who says, this is a normal practice, this is what happens to you in a cyclical nature in your mind, so don't worry about it. And some actually survive and go on with the informed optimism now. And some actually just crash and burn because of that, because they don't seek that help, they don't get that understanding from anyone. So that's why I said, even if you don't resonate with me, just come back next month. Someone else you'll resonate with, and just keep coming back. Stallone said it. One of his key rules is 95% of the success he's had is just turning up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's unrealistic to think that everyone's always going to gel and relate to each other. It's not. You connect differently with different people and align differently with people.
You do, definitely. I mean, let's talk about future-proofing wealth, and let's talk about things like, for example, I watched The Big Short the other night, the film, again, about the credit crunch and about collateral debt swaps and stuff like that. And they're still doing it. It's still going on. And I thought, because I watched it because I thought we're in a position now where inflation's running rampant again, and it will continue to go up, especially if they start talking about the war with tariffs and stuff like that, because prices will go up in the shops as a result of that. Hence the reason why the EU's not, at this point in time, they've pulled off and went, no, we're not going to do tariffs. Because it's stupidity itself. You're maybe trying to be protectionist towards your own markets and actually get your own people to buy your own stuff from your own markets. But if they start buying the stuff from the imports that are coming in at the higher price, you're just fueling inflation. And then you have got no control over the bank. The Federal Reserve government's got no control over that, what they say about base rates and interest rates. And also the Bank of England, the government's got no control over that either. So if you start fueling inflation because of tariffs, then what are they going to do is they're not going to reduce base rates, by the way, and they're going to maybe put them up to counter inflation, which you've caused in the first place. See what that happens there. And this is the thing. And so that's why I was watching The Big Short again. I went, oh, is there any similarities with this again? And there was a wee bit. But the one important thing is, exactly the next day, Nationwide comes out with a press release and says, we're actually trying to encourage the government to let us and allow us now to change the multiplier from 4.5 times maximum to significantly more, so first-time buyers can get properties. We not learn.
You think they would have learned from the what happened before? Because it's just
they don't care. They're getting bonuses.
Yeah,
they're only interested. The banks are only interested in bonuses. They don't care what's happened in the past. They weren't involved in it because we are now almost 20 years on from that time.
Yeah, it will be.
It's a new generation. It's new people. It never experienced that turmoil and what happened to everybody as a result. So they don't care. All they're interested in is the money that they get from it, because they just see, oh, we can get a bonus for doing what? How do we sell more stuff to more people? How do we get more mortgage products out? Let's pretend to the government, if they let us change the multiplier, we're going to get more than 4.5 times then. We could get 10,000, because it said 10,000 more first-time buyers to get homes. It's like, yeah, but you're going to put 10,000 more first-time buyers into serious financial difficulty, possibly. And then, if you're allowed to do that to first-time buyers, that doesn't stop there. That allows you to do with every other buyer as well. Not just for, so see how they've sneakily tried to sneak that in and pretend at that time. Again, this is all about future-proofing wealth. This is just about protecting and understanding what the game everybody else is playing and how that can affect the economy, which in turn will affect you and what you do with your wealth. And whether you're putting it in the high risk stocks, whether you're putting it overseas, whether you're putting it in the bonds to protect it, low risk, stuff, whether you're putting it into property, whether you're putting it into gold, whether you're putting it into silver to hedge it, all these different things are so important to think about. But the average man on the street, or average woman on the street, and everybody in between, because there is everybody in between, they don't understand. They don't understand, and to be honest, they don't care, because they've got more things. They've got like relationships to sort out. They've got their work to sort out. They've got their day-to-day with their children to sort out. All these different things. So they don't keep an eye on these sort of things. For me personally, I'm just so passionate about it. It floats my boat. So I keep an eye on it all the time. It's statistics. It's right up my street, but it's important stuff. It is the stuff that can make or break you, especially if you're an investor.
Yeah, and I do think, like you say about the nationwide rolling this out or going to do it, and I just remember.
No, they're trying. So they're trying. So they're trying to influence the government. I think the government have got legislation in place, or the Financial Services Authority, Conduct Authority, says no, you can only do 4.5 times at maximum. Now they're trying to get the Financial Conduct Authority, if that's what it is, to actually lift that and actually do something. So we're now lifting the stress test, and next minute we're lifting the multiplier. It's like we're going exactly back to where we were before.
Like with the Northern Rock.
10 years maybe down the line, all over again.
I remember just like with Northern Rock and what happened, and me to look at that would concern me, I think. But somebody a wee bit younger than me who's going to be a first-time buyer and things, they're just going to lap that up and be like, "Let's go."
Yeah, because I've got money, I'm making income. I'm not caring. I could afford it. And then what happens when you lose your job and the economy tanks? Then you can't afford it.
Yeah,
you can't afford it, and that's the point. So you have to make sure you future-proof your wealth by putting money aside, and we'll cover things in here as a result of that.
Yeah,
this is why we talk about the 40-60 rule. You could do 40-30 or 30-70, whatever it is, for investing away. When you get money in, you put 30% away. I mean, 40% or 35% goes in taxes, national insurance, and employers' contributions, and your normal PAYE tax for normal people. So it's about 30 to 35% or something like that disappears on tax of your 100% income. You have another, say, 35% you've got to use for yourself, and then you've got 30% you probably just put aside and say, okay, that's the investment. Maybe 20% goes in, 10% goes into long-term investments, 20% goes into easy access investments like ISAs and stuff like that, just in case. So you're kind of protected. So that's what people teach you. That's what people like Dave Ramsey and that teach you. That's what I teach as well, to be honest. It's like that's what I did. Yeah, I just got wild and I just started going, let's put 60% into it. Because I knew, because me, it's a mathematical equation. It's like the more you put in earlier on, the more it compounds and the quicker you get to the end result that you want. So for me, it was all about being very competitive about how quick can I get to millionaire status? Because and how quick can I get to able to retire and walk away from a job and actually still have income to survive on, and still continue to invest and do what I want to do when I want to do it. That was just a competition for me. And so it was all about, I know where I am, I know where I'm going. How can I make that so short in between there, the time involved and what I need to do in between there to make this happen at the end?
Yeah, and putting that money aside each time is so important, and having that definition between what your wants are and what your needs are, because a lot of people blur that completely and just spend on everything. But really, if you define what your needs are,
Anything it takes
what
to, you know,
yeah,
I'm drunk, I'm on bid up TV. Oh, that looks good, I'll buy it. And it comes in the post the next day, and it's like, my God, what did I buy that for?
what is
Pneumatic drill. It's like a pneumatic drill. It's like you've not even got a driveway or anything, and you've got a
I think
pneumatic drill in here.
the modern equivalent of bid up TV is TikTok shop.
Is it? Right,
Yeah,
okay.
and the amount
So,
of people
so
I
there you
hear,
go.
oh,
Times have moved on. It's TikTok shop. You get all these different things that people are throwing at you, and you think, that seems like a good idea. You know,
yep,
some sort of sticky plaster that you put on you to make you feel better, or something like that. And people have encouraged X-ray specs. That was the thing they used to sell in the papers years ago. X-ray specs in the Sunday Post. You'll not remember that either. But that was the adverts they used to pay. And X-ray spec, you can get X-ray specs. And I was like, I never ever bought anything like that. But I used to watch used to see it all the time. The adverts, I used to go, wow, that's unbelievable. It's like, now, did I believe that? No way. Did I even intend? It's like, no way. And you had Super 8 projectors, because that's what you had at the time. You never had DVDs or anything like that. You're able to order a film on Super 8. You're able to watch it in black and white or something on a projector that you bought. These, I wouldn't say these were the days, but that was all these different things. And that was all designed to just let you part with your money every single time. And
yeah,
that's what you have to protect yourself from. Do you really need it? Rather than actually, do you want it? If you want it, yes, you don't need it then. You don't need it. And how much is that want going to really truly cost you in the long run, with the fact that you could have put that money somewhere else to better use, and that is the loss, the opportunity loss that you've made as a result of spending it needlessly on something that you wanted rather than what you really needed. It's a difference between, for example, going out and buying a Ferrari, or I tell you what, I'm going to go out and buy a Ford Focus or Fiesta or whatever
yeah.
they're called, whatever it is now, and that'll get me from A to B just as well, and probably just as comfortably, well, more comfortably, to be honest. And I'll no scrape my car and need to bother about the speed bumps and stuff because I've got a decent car. That's the sort of thing. I'm just running about my camper van now.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I just went to the pin meeting in my camper van.
Did you really?
Everybody's like, what? It's like, I'm not bothered.
But then, to be fair, and it's like, and this kind of incorporates a few things we spoke about, like taking advice from somebody that's a lot more successful, and do you know, and it's like, obviously you've advised me over the years and made me make some decisions that I would have otherwise probably made, buying a bigger house. Do you know, I told you the idea of getting a car. I don't need a car. I've got a work car that we drive about, and that gets me about, and do you know, things like that. And it's like, now I look back and I think, God, if I'd done that, I'd have been a lot more out of pocket. So it's like, it's
You'd
having,
be a lot worse off.
yeah.
And I have the
And so
foresight to
what?
see that.
It's not.
It's daft to think that, but I did talk about it again when I do my talks, and I speak to people about it. I do talk about the difficulty in most people in society, which is the 95% group, is the lack vision.
Mhm.
They don't actually look at the bigger picture and see where it was going to end up, and ask themselves, is that where I really want to be?
Yeah.
Is that what I really want to do finally? Is that where I really want to retire? Or is it something different? They don't want to look at the future. They're not really trained to look at the future. They're just trained to focus on today. And it's and everything the media purports to, it's almost like everything's about survival.
Mhm.
Cost of living crisis. What cost of living crisis? Get a grip, really. There is no cost of living crisis. There always has been people who struggle, but it's no significantly different than what it was before today, and yet the media still peddle it as a cost of living crisis.
I think because it's put in front of you so much. Do you know, on
Of
social
course,
media, I think
because
we've
they
all got
want
phones
people
in
to
their
be
hand.
fearful.
It's scaremongering.
And it's the classic example now. It's the government's come in with their budget, and they were meant to be 15 billion borrowed, but they're at 20 billion for the month. So the spring budget is coming up. It's going to have some tough choices about, we can't spend because we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think they're going to go for landlords, easy pickings at some point in time. They've got to. This tax credit that you get in Section 24, I do think at some point they're going to do away with that completely. It's coming. They'll do it. And they typically do it when it gets smaller. So, for example, let's look at LPG.
Okay.
And how the government think. LPG, so when they had petrol vehicles and they've got liquid petroleum gas, which is the LPG, which was before electric cars, it was meant to be an efficient way of running cars on the LPG gas. And cars were able to convert, and they did do some cars at LPG. So the government deliberately said, we're going to take all the tax, no fuel tax on LPG. So therefore, LPG was half the price of petrol, and it was to try and encourage people to go from petrol to LPG. Now that never happened because petrol was so low in price anyway. Everybody's tolerated it and thought, well, I'm not going to change. It's an untested system. It's no dramatically spread out the world or the country where I can go into a garage and get LPG for my vehicle, so I'll struggle. So it never actually took off as a result of it. But what happens after that is to get everybody on LPG, which is environmentally friendly compared to petrol. And then what they do is they just go, I will put the tax up now. We've got you anyway.
Yeah.
And they leave everybody with petrol. And then what they do with that is then they make it even worse for petrol to force all the people who are left to convert to LPG. So see what happens, Section 24. They'll have a wee drop landlords that are just adamant and they're staying there. They'll eventually go, we're taking that away. And it'll either force them to sell or it'll force them to actually switch to a company. Yeah. So there's a record amount of landlords. More companies have been set up by landlords and investors. So there's something on the horizon for them and all. I genuinely think on the horizon in the future, we'll see some sort of legislation, if it is possible. I don't know if it is possible or not. I have seen a discussion paper years ago about it from the government, and I don't even have sight of it, and I can't even remember where I saw it, and I don't have it, and I should have kept it. It's saying that the think tank thinks, I tell you what, maybe we should just tax all the single limited company owners, like 0 employees or 1 employee. Maybe we should tax them under normal income tax rather than corporation tax. I don't even know if that's entirely possible, but you never know. And I wouldn't want that. That's why.
There's a way.
Yeah, because there's thousands of, there's millions, I would say, of single owner limited company
so it's
people.
So is that would be
your
limited
plumbers,
to one
plumbers deliberately incorporated, your electricians deliberately incorporated, all to be able to just take minimum amount out at the personal allowance and then take the rest out in dividends, which is taxed at 8.75%. So their marginal rate was almost just 9% on their tax, because they were just taking out the allowance and then taking out the rest in dividends. So I mean, they're bound to think in the future we're going to have to do this in order to get them as well, because they're not paying a huge amount of tax. Now, admittedly, they're probably paying corporation tax 25%. So overall, they're actually contributing. It's just that they've got more in their pocket. That's all.
Yeah.
This is what people don't realise about the way they're doing. Oh, you're dodging tax. No, you're not. They're still paying 25% corporation tax on their income that they've got coming in first before they even get cited. It just means it's not coming out of their pocket. It's coming out of the company's pocket, and then they're keeping more money rather than actually paying themselves PAYE through the company, and then getting taxed on the PAYE, and then they've got less coming out. So that's how they do it that way. So it's marginally better doing it that way for them, and they keep more money. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens as well. And again, that's all about things like longevity planning, making sure you're in a position that you could account for anything like that. I'm not saying definitely for guaranteed that this will happen. And I'm saying like this is a 10% chance at this point in time probability, which is not really that significant, but you never know. And you've got to think, if that happened, can you weather that? Or are you completely reliant on all that income coming out of that company? I had somebody at Necker that said that. It's like they were at Necker and I said, so how, what do you do? It's like, oh, we're real estate and we do holiday homes in Tampa or something like that in Florida. I went, okay. And I went, so, what, are you coming back next year and all the rest of it? And they go, well, if the business is good, we'll come back next year. So they're completely reliant on their business paying for it. And so if they've not got their business, they're not coming. So what does that tell you? Can they weather a storm? No.
Probably not. Yeah. Yeah. If things were to change and interest rates were to go up, and they would probably go to the wall.
Yeah, that for me is like that's a at this point in time. I think your degree of risk gets less, or you hedge yourself more as you get more experience and
Yeah.
you gain more wisdom overall, and that clearly passes with time. So there's no surprise it's the older generation that understand that. It's nothing to do with it's just because you're old, you're like that. It's because you've got
It's
years of
knowledge and
wisdom and
experience. Yeah.
experience and expertise in it, and you've learned from other people, and you've also learned from your failures.
You mentioned about longevity planning there, and if we talk about future-proofing your wealth things, planning for longevity. Now, I know obviously you planning for longevity in terms of your age and your health and things is a big thing. But what about things like your actual financial situation? Like these people you said, have they actually planned for the long term? Do you know? And then thinking about your healthcare and your health, and do you know, and inflation. Can you withstand a big hike in inflation further down the line? Do you know, all these things are so important for the longevity of your wealth and your investments.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why for me personally, this is why it's so important to actually do risk analysis and understand where you are and what could potentially put your investments or your income or anything else at risk, and just actually play the downside just to in a model. This is why the governments and all the rest of it and think tanks do financial modeling, but they do it mass scale. I'll be honest, they probably get it wrong. And they more or less do. I mean, what happened to these 6 interest rate reductions this year? Now it's 2 at the end of the year they're talking about. I don't think it's going to be any at all, unless something really significantly changes about tariffs and inflation and all the rest of it. I think it's going to be pushed into next year, and I think it's just going to be the same base rates. Hence the reason why the banks are now lobbying to let go of the multiplier, so they can still lend, so they can make money, and that money then gets pumped in the economy, and then we've been through this at the beginning. So this is all about making sure you've got that and you've got it in place. You remember, you're going to live longer. 65 is no longer the time. That's why they moved it to 67. The retirement date will end up getting pushed to about 70-year-old later on. And it's also predicted the retirement ages by 2045 or something like that. It's going to be, for a woman, it's going to be 84. For a man, it's going to be about 80 or something. So they're going to gain each about 4 years in their health. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be accurate, in all honesty, because I do see, when you look at the food chains and what people are consuming now, and the amount of effectively poisons and toxins that are put into their food that they're consuming, I think this is the old thing about when somebody's actually mentioned it in the past about the next generation could be the generation which actually lives less than any other generation.
Yeah, because
so we'll start to decline. And I think it's important. That's why, because I'll be honest, I'll be pretty pissed if I die early after what I've done and what I've built, and not able to get the full value out of it. Hence the reason why I've got no desire to encourage that to happen. Hence the reason why I train. Hence the reason why I eat healthily. Hence the reason why I eat the right things. Hence the reason why I avoid toxins. Hence the reason why I avoid situations where it could affect my health. And I'm talking about, for me, it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's Howard Hughes, like where it's like, oh my God, I'm never going out the door ever again. I'm going to live in the hyperlytic chamber. Not like that. I would say it's more, I'm just conscious that, for example, if you've got these scent candles and all the rest of it in your house, it's like, it's effectively vaping on a diluted scale.
On a smaller scale, it is,
Yeah.
But all these plugins and
you're breathing in. You're breathing that in. So when you walk out as well into the air and the air quality you're living in, so if you're in a city, especially if you're in China or something like that, nobody gives a shit about the air. You're breathing all that in. That's why a lot of people have got masks on, but they're also, their lifespan is quite short. in these areas because of that. And it's the same with places like, I think it's New York. Hence the reason why Glasgow is now an emissions-free zone. Hence the reason why London's got emission-free zones, because they've now realised it's like that's affecting people's health, and they're going to have to do something about it. Seriously,
putting a lot more green spaces and things in as well.
This is where all your illnesses come from. This is where all your things come from. This is where dementia comes from. This is where cancer comes from. This is where your heart disease comes from. This is where your Parkinson's comes from. This is all this. This is where it all comes from. There's no scratching your head thinking, I wonder how we're going to heal Parkinson's. No, Parkinson's is not a healing thing. Parkinson's is the result of the lifestyle that's been led.
Yeah.
I'm definitely concerned with that. And the amount of research I've seen with doctors and scientists and all the rest of it, for me personally, that is my full belief, and especially dementia as well.
It's quite an interesting take, because then basically you're at that point, there isn't a cure because the damage is done.
There's no. It's like there's only a delay. Scientifically, there's only a delay in terms of medication, which will prolong life for a certain amount of time, but not cure anything. In other words, it will slow down, the effects of Parkinson's, slow down the effects of dementia. It won't obliterate it. It won't reverse it. It won't do anything. I genuinely believe that. And I think most people that have got a bit of common sense will actually know that and come to that conclusion as well. It's obvious. If you're drinking ether, which is an alcohol, it's a poison. And if you continually drink ether, and that poison goes into your kidneys, into your liver, into your pancreas, and all the rest of it, and if you continually take refined sugar, which is one of the biggest toxins and poisons ever, refined sugar, it goes in everything. If you continually take high doses of casein, which is in milk, it's proven. High doses of it actually causes cancer long term. Yet nobody says anything about it.
Never heard of that.
No, if you watch Fed Up, and the scientists are on there with all their data and all their information, and it's all public knowledge. It's in the journals and everything. And that's why I avoid all these things. So hence the reason why, and a classic example is that, you drink soya milk and you'll get, that and all the rest of it. No, I drink organic soya milk. I'm no daft here. It's like I get the protein out of the soya, but I'm certainly drinking organic, because there ain't any way I'm drinking soya long term anyway, if it's not organic, because it's sprayed with all the chemicals. When you ingest meat, for example, how much is that cattle been with their antibiotics, their hormones, and the things that they're getting to boost the yield to get from them, the number of steaks and all the rest of it, and all the things that they're having to get looked after with the antibiotics. You're consuming that on small scale. You're actually consuming that. When you're consuming something in the sea, look at the state of the seas in some places. The fish are eating that. The fish are eating it. And you're eating the fish.
As well, yeah.
Mercury poisoning. Look at the farmed fish, for example. Farmed salmon. Let's look at farmed salmon. Let's take that. Look at the amount of fat and the amount of, horrible, like cysts and everything on some of these things. And the amount of antibiotics to put into that food chain in order to try and get the highest yield out of these farmed salmon up in the north and stuff like that. And it's the same with, I think, mussels and all the rest of it. They try and get higher yields by putting all these antibiotics in. But what's happening is you're actually ingesting small parts of that. Hence the reason why your tolerance for antibiotics to help you becomes less and less every single time.
Salmon's quite a bad one as well, and I do like salmon. I think, but I've tried to find, and you find it, and it's like it's wild caught salmon, but isn't it actually wild? Isn't it actually wild caught?
Eggs, milk. Somebody challenged me the other night. Says, you're vegan. What's wrong with cow's milk? It's meant for cows. That's why it's called cow's milk.
That's the simple answer.
It's meant for cows, because that's why it's called cow's milk, and it's meant for a baby cow, not a baby human.
Yeah.
A mother's milk is meant for a baby human, not cow's milk.
That's a good answer.
But you see, it's like we all, because we've all been indoctrinated into that sort of thinking. I'm not convincing anybody to go vegan or plant-based or
No.
change their diet or go keto or anything like that. All I'm telling you is what works for me. That's all. And it's worked for me pretty well right now. You know, my Garmin sits and tells me, it's like you've got the athletic age of a 42-year-old.
Yeah, I think there's no denying, especially when you've tried and tested it, that things like that work. I know that British standards aren't as bad as, like, say, America. I've watched the dairy industry in America and things programs, and it's just horrific, what goes on. But I mean, it is still in your food chain, just not as much. I know there's.
But think about eggs as well. Eggs is more or less everything, all your cakes and everything like that. And think about what they do to the hens for the eggs. And it's not anything to do with the treating the hens, it's what they put into the hens to get the higher yield. And it's what's ending up in the egg. And there's tolerance levels that the government allows them to get away with. Yeah. And there's things that they don't let them. There's things that they don't let them actually test for, and that's why it gets it. That's why you end up getting salmonella, the salmonella and all the rest of it, bird flu and all these different things, and then they have to give them injections, antibiotics to get rid of bird flu, or they just have to wipe them all out. So you could see that all passes on. Hence the reason why would you want to do that? What's the chances of you getting anything from a plant? Minimal.
Yeah.
And somebody says to me, it's like, why do you eat meat? I mean, where do you get your protein from? I eat what the cow eats. That's where I get my protein from.
Yeah, cut that whole thing out there, crazy. Yeah.
I didn't need the cow because I'm just eating what they're eating. It's exactly the same thing.
The processed part out of it.
Yeah, and I'm saving a fortune at the same time because I'm not having to pay for the meat.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realise. It's like fruit and veg and stuff like that is a lot more cost effective, especially go to places like Lidl's. Admittedly, obviously they're mass produced and they'll have, you'll get back to, what about toxins and that? It's like, it's probably less toxin, I would say, than it is out of cattle, I would say.
Yeah.
Because then cattle, remember, are defecating on themselves, they're standing in it, they're in about all that and all the rest. It's like, oh my God. It's like, oh no. That's a no-no.
For anybody tuning in and maybe wondering why we're talking about this, we're talking about longevity and obviously your health and being able to actually enjoy and make the most of your wealth that you're built. You need your health to do that, and that's why we're talking about diet.
It's your health, and then obviously that accounts for your brain health, and that makes you help make better decisions. It helps you. Yeah. It helps you. Your reliance on healthcare and stuff like that then drops as a result because you're no longer ill all the time. You're always healthy. You repair very well. Remember, your body is designed to repair itself. The reason that it doesn't repair itself is because you keep giving it toxins, which it's trying to repair itself from. So you're actually just poisoning yourself every single time. And it's continually fighting against that. So if you over-poison yourself, you don't know you're doing it, by the way, by what you're consuming and what you're breathing in and all the rest of it, then you're obviously going to have a problem. And then when something really seriously happens, your body really can't repair that seriousness. And I think potentially that's what ends up as cancer. Hence the reason why there's so many. It's like 1 in 2 now get cancer.
It's everywhere.
It's like it used to be 1 in 10. It's like now it's 1 in 2. Definitely the food chain.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I 100% believe that is the source of the.
Nobody's going to admit it though, Richard.
Yeah.
No one will admit it. No government will say it because there'll be utter chaos. The whole capitalistic system will collapse overnight. If they came out and said, this is the problem. Hence the reason why they try to change it and tweak it without anybody noticing.
Slightly without, under the radar.
Electric cars. Let's all move to electric cars. That's because everything is coming out of the exhaust of the other cars.
Killing everybody. Yeah.
But then the electric car will then just cause a problem itself. So, and these are all different things. And inflation protection as well as the one.
What I was wanting to ask you.
Longevity planning, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about inflation because then, I mean, I personally, I'll ask you the question because I kind of want to hear what you've got to say. And I know people will be wondering, but how do you protect yourself against inflation, for the long term? I mean, what's the best way to go about doing that when you've got wealth and investments and things and think, right, okay, I need to make sure I'm prepared here in case inflation starts to go crazy or worse than what it has.
Inflation's a silent eroder of money, isn't it? Nobody
Yeah.
really notices it. It's like the silent killer of carbon monoxide of of the money world, isn't it?
Yeah.
We could just
Mhm.
call inflation the silent carbon monoxide. It's the carbon monoxide of the money world. It's the silent killer of or erosion of money. That's what it does because as inflation, as the price goes up, and you've still got £1 in the bank, and or you've got £1 under your bed, and the price goes up from £1 to £1.5 next year, you're only able to buy 95% of that now because it's £1.5. You've got to pay for it, and you've only got a quid, so you're
Yeah.
only be able to buy 95% of that product now, and that's what inflation does to your money over time. So you need to invest it wisely. The money you are going to use long term, and that is why they have things like the stock market, because companies pay out dividends. Blue chip companies, that's the ones I would always recommend. That's the ones I'm in. They pay out dividends. They're designed to do that, so they actually hedge you with dividend payments, or they go towards covering for inflation, and they might go up in value because more people invest in the company, so the value, the capital of you've got in the first place goes up with the share value you've invested in the beginning. Property is a really good classic one as well. Property actually goes up continually over a period of time in the long term. It always does, and it always will. As salaries go up continually over the years, the affordability goes up as well. Therefore, property goes up as a natural result to actually just to align with that, the purchasing power of 1 to 6. So whatever the average earnings is in that area, property values will be about 6 times that value on average. That's where it should be. So the mileage has got to go if that's the case. I mean, when you look at Dundee City Centre, it's like 140 grand on average. It's like, wow, these are all really affordable. I mean, in a time where interest rates are extraordinarily high, these values of these properties would actually go up a lot quicker because people will actually seek them because they're a lot lower value.
And people might say, "Oh, I'll invest in property," but property, the market might drop and things. But if you're in it for the long term,
who cares?
I'll do a full circle. And
long term, it goes up, or it still stays even, but it's always giving you income every single time anyway. If you keep it occupied. But it's to understand what property to buy and how to invest it properly, and how to understand your numbers, and that's what we teach all the time for that reason. So that's another way of doing it. You can buy gold. You can buy crypto. But
you can.
It goes from 1 to 7, the risk strategy. The 1 to 7, I think it is most investment houses. I think crypto's at 100. I think there's no, the crypto's not even on the scale of risk. It's just a complete gamble, isn't it? It's a fictitious thing. It's like, mid-air. It's just like fluff, floating in the wind. It's just like air. It doesn't exist. It's nothing. It's just what people believe it's worth to them, and that's all it's all about. So you can invest in gold and silver. That does hedge because gold and silver is a commodity. You can invest in arts. You can invest in paintings and artists and up and coming artists and stuff like that. Or you can invest in family funds. Other people's fund. Like I have. So, for example, if I've got a fund and I invite people to come into that fund, therefore they can buy units in that fund, and they'll get the same return as me, based on the units that they buy. So that's another way to hedge as well. And the fund is rock solid because the owner has their investment in it as well. That's when it's when they've not got an investment in it themselves, then that's what you've got to worry about.
Because if it's such a good
just
deal, why are you involved?
And so that's the sort of things you've got to look out for, and to probably protect you from inflation. But inflation is the silent money eroder. The great thing is about if you get a mortgage from a bank on a property, that erodes in value in time as well. That's the benefit you get from a mortgage, because the mortgage actually stays at 60 grand, and as inflation goes up, that mortgage erodes in value. 60 grand is no longer, so it's brilliant. So you get the plus side of the property going up, you get the mortgage eroding, and then you get the income in between.
Yeah, definitely.
Win. Woohoo!
Yeah, so all these points to like the planning for the longevity planning and things is really such a key part of future proofing your wealth. But I think as well, like if we turn back to what we initially thought about, you really need to be in the right mindset and think about what you're spending and what are your needs and what are your wants, and really define them and start putting money aside and have that have a continual gain, instead of if you've got a loss all the time, you're on the wrong path, and you really need to speak to the right people to sort that out, I think. And that's really where I was going to draw the line under what we're talking about today, unless you want to add anything else about longevity.
No, that's it. I mean, I think we've said all we need to say, but
yeah, I think
I
we covered
genuinely
a lot
think at this point in time, the biggest lesson I've learned of a Richard Branson is like, you better make sure you look after your health.
Yeah, I think
because
it's
your
paramount.
Your wealth isn't going to make any difference. No one lies in their deathbed and wishes they had more money.
Yeah.
There's only one thing they wish they ever had.
More time.
And it's time.
Yeah, more time. And you know, looking at the life expectancies and things, you know, we might have a lot shorter time than we think, unless we start looking after ourselves.
Yeah. And it doesn't. You don't need to be the average person. You see, you could be above average. You could be extraordinary. You could be outstanding at what you do in order to make sure you live a lot more prosperous, healthy life. There's no point living at 100 if you're basically wheelchair bound and you're like,
yeah.
You know, it's like there's no point.
No, because it's no quality of life. It's no quality of life.
Yeah, so you need the quality of life. That's what you need. So this is why it's so important to look after your body, because this is what will get you through to the next steps. It ain't the money. Money's a tool to do good and look after you, fair enough. But if you're not here, you've not got it anyway.
And there's nothing there to enjoy, yeah.
No, it was all for nothing. All for nothing. And that's what pushes me and drives me right now. So at this point in time, I am pushed by my circumstances rather than pulled by my dreams.
Yeah.
I pull my dreams a bit because there is other things I want to do, but circumstances are definitely, because then when you get to this and you think to yourself, wait a minute, everybody's popping their clogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, got to do something about it. Luckily enough, I've done something about it 10, 15 years ago.
Do you know, you talk about, just before we finish up, you've spoke about recently, and you know, there's a few people that have been the same age as you around you and passed away and made you really think about it. God, I've noticed people my age that are dying. I'm like, how are people dying?
Well, it's an average. So somebody has to be below average and somebody has to be above average to balance that out in the average.
Yeah.
And do you just want to be average? If you're going to be average, then you know where you're ending up. So you need to be above average or extraordinary at what you're doing, and focus on that. So it is looking after yourself. It's just doing that. And if you can't get out and you it's like, oh, I'm struggling. It's like, make yourself walk. Just go out and walk. The most important thing you need to keep is your legs and your mobility. That's the most important thing. You lose that, and that's a slippery slope to nowhere.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, as usual, Jim, thanks for all your insights. That was a really good show. Hopefully, we've covered quite a lot.
Cheery note.
Yeah, but yeah, obviously, future-proofing your wealth, and indeed, a very important part of that is your health. But we'll leave it there today. We'll be back next Monday, 12:30, as usual, for the Wealth Creation Show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and thanks again, Jim.
Okay, bye-bye for now.